The next witness will be Commander Paul Toland, father of Erica Toland, held in Japan since 2003.
Thank you. Co-Chairman McGovern and Wolf, Congressman Smith, and members of the Human Rights Commission, thank you for calling this hearing and bringing attention to the appalling human rights tragedy of international child abduction. My name is Paul Toland. I'm a commander in the United States Navy with over 20 years of active service, and I am the only living parent of Erica Toland, abducted over 6 years ago and wrongfully retained in Japan by her grandmother. My daughter Erica was abducted by my now deceased wife Etsuko on July 13th, 2003 from our home at Negishi Navy Family Housing in Yokohama, Japan. Etsuko and I were married for over 7 years before Erica was born. For the majority of our marriage, we were assigned to duty stations in the United States. Etsuko was a naturalized United States citizen, and Erica is also a United States citizen. Soon after Erica's birth, Etsuko sunk into severe postpartum depression. She refused treatment in a military hospital, and her untreated condition rapidly deteriorated. Our marriage, too, soon followed suit. Etsuko's mother lived alone in Japan and did not want us to move back to the United States, nor did she want to move with us. Instead, she wanted Etsuko to stay in Japan. I was unaware of this and caught completely by surprise when I received a call from my neighbor in the summer of 2003 asking me if I was moving because there was a moving truck outside our house. When I returned home, Etsuko, my daughter Erica, and our household items were all gone. Soon after this, I began my journey into the surreal world of Japanese family law. Japan is a haven for international child abduction. In the past 50 years, no child has ever been returned from Japan to any foreign country. Japan stands alone as more than just a haven for abduction and is instead, quite literally, a black hole for abduction from which no child ever returns. I first sought advice from the Navy Legal Services Office in Yokosuka, Japan. I was distraught and looking for help. My daughter had disappeared into the foreign country in which I was assigned, and I needed the Navy's help. Any attorney with a rudimentary knowledge of the dysfunctional Japanese family law system would have told me to avoid entering the Japanese legal system at all costs and instead hire an attorney in my home state, contact the U.S. State Department and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Instead, the advice I was given by the young, inexperienced Navy attorney was, "This is a private matter. I suggest you hire a Japanese attorney." That advice doomed me to years of unnecessary legal battles. 2 years later, Washington State Family Court did rule that they had jurisdiction over our marriage, but they also ruled that since I had followed the advice of the Navy Legal Service Office and entered the Japanese family law system, I had forfeit my right to any U.S. jurisdiction over my case. I entered Japanese mediation in late 2003 in an attempt to maintain contact with Erica. The Japanese version of mediation is unlike anything you could possibly imagine. My wife and I never saw each other or met to discuss issues. Instead, we both waited behind frosted glass in separate waiting rooms. Each spoke to a judge separately and never discussed any issues of substance. Most important, the court completely avoided any discussion regarding visitation with Erica. When I said I wanted to see Erica on weekends, the judge and the attorneys in the room laughed. When I asked to see Erica to give her her gifts on her birthday, I was advised to mail the gifts to my wife's attorney. The same advice was again repeated at Christmas. After 8 months of repeatedly asking to see Erica, I was finally granted 20 minutes of visitation in a small courthouse playroom while having both a court supervisor and Erica's grandmother present in the playroom with me. Meanwhile, my wife, her attorneys, and my attorneys all watched the visitation from behind one-way glass while the entire event was recorded on videotape. This is the type of visitation afforded to felon criminals in the United States, yet there I was, the victim of a crime and a highly respected military officer, subjected to this humiliating spectacle. My own Japanese attorney apologized for the actions taken by the Japanese court and asked me in an email to, and I quote, "Please understand your case is not a piece of cake because of the racism and irrationalism of Japan. It might be something like defending the Taliban in the US." In summer 2004, I was transferred back to the United States. and spent the next 3 years in vain trying to maintain contact with Erica, spending approximately $200,000 in attorney fees in the process. Then in late 2007, I received the tragic news that Etsuko had committed suicide, having never received proper treatment for her depression. Although devastated by her death, I had renewed hope to be able to see Erica. Our own U.S. Supreme Court has found that the rights of a parent supersede the rights of any third-party non-parent, and I naively thought that other societies, such as Japan, would also respect the rights of a parent over a non-parent. However, I was wrong. Erica is today held by her grandmother, Akiko Futagi, in Japan, and I have absolutely no access to her. The U.S. State Department has asked to visit Erica, but Akiko has said no. The Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs has asked to see Erica, but again, Akiko said no. In the Japanese system, where no enforcement mechanism exists and compliance is completely voluntary, all any government agency can say to me is, "We're sorry, we tried." Nobody can offer any remedies or solutions because none exist. I flew back to Japan this past October and waited on a street corner. Excuse me. To greet Erica on her way home from school and bring her birthday presents, because this is the only contact with dignity that is possible. I am left with no other choices. I knew if I tried to take Erica to the embassy and attempt to get a passport, I would likely meet the same fate as Christopher Savoy met when he attempted to retrieve his children from Japan. I would likely be blocked at the gates of the embassy by a U.S. State Department more interested in preserving relations with Japan over the welfare of U.S. citizens, and I would likely end up in a Japanese jail as Christopher Savoy did for simply trying to bring my daughter home. Nothing is more important and deep-seated in this world than a parent's love for his or her child. We all love our children. Equally important is a society's responsibility to ensure that their most vulnerable citizens, their children, have the opportunity to know and love their parents. This is where Japan and many other nations have failed, and that is why we are here today. I am left without any remaining options. Erica is essentially held captive in Japan, separated from her only living parent in a country that has never returned a child. I never dreamed that serving my country overseas in one of our allied nations would result in the loss of my only child. Japan is supposedly an ally of the United States, so why does the United States continue to tolerate this behavior from Japan? How can a nation that we call an ally be guilty of such despicable human rights violations and get away with it? I humbly ask that you take any and all actions within your power to make a difference for Erica and for all the children wrongfully abducted and withheld from loving parents. And I ask that you act now. My own parents, married for over 53 years, are both ill and in their 80s. They hang on to life right now in the hopes of meeting the granddaughter they have never met. So please do not delay and act now. Thank you.
Commander, thank you very much for your testimony. Very powerful.